trickle in, but Citizen wants to get home too, so.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
That's true.
No.
You kind of see Brian, but
Yeah. Service in the gas hall. Great to see.
You can like deliver yourself a conversation by your phone.
By the way,
I was like,
What time is it?
It is time to start.
I think we should start.
Okay,
Come
welcome.
on in, come on in.
forget it.
Moonlighting.
I don't know about for them.
Who did you see were stuck?
If you hear me cut twice, sorry.
How's it coming actually?
What? Someone tell me their life.
Should we, should we go around this? Yeah.
I mean, is it that work?
It's a work.
Yeah, work on it. And I'm just like, it's not. I think conversation first. So should I correct it?
Is it important enough?
I know, I was thinking we should actually do this, like, it's, go around. Because it's small and a lot of people don't know. Should go first. So, okay, welcome everyone. I think first we'll introduce each other, introduce ourselves to each other. A lot of people know each other and some people don't.
Let's just say also
Your name?
name and children's grades.
Okay, Sharon Roberts.
I'm Kava Katzoff. My husband is David Katzoff, and we have a 10th grader, Toga, and a 6th grader, Simcha.
Naomi Carmel. I have a 9th grader, Sri, and a 7th grader, Hadara.
Lily Shields, I have a 10th grader, Daniela.
Rana Eisenberg, 9th grader, Marisha.
All right, remember your first name.
Rana Eisenberg.
Oh, perfect. Hi, Afi Guggenheim,
We have a
junior, 11th grader, named Judah Guggenheim. Was I supposed to say anything else?
That's good.
Your favorite
Maybe
food?
say a million things, that would be great.
Last four of your social.
Is everyone giving in?
Your PIN number? What's your PIN number?
I'm Fauna Olson. I have a 9th grader, Erin.
I'm Jenny Hunt. I have an 8th grader, so I'm just sort of hanging out. I'm Jane Field. I have a 9th grader named Judy.
Louise Stevens. I have a daughter, Abiel Safed, in 11th grade, and I have 3 alumni.
One up my gosh.
26, 23, 21.
And their pictures are all upstairs in the office now. We have all the graduating.
No, we're going to say 2018.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Sarah Glasshofer, one alumnus, senior and 8th grade.
Motion Margulies, 2 in 10th grade, 1 in 6th. Casey Hollander, 1 in 9th grade, Brooke, and twins in 5th grade.
I'm Yoshi Gustan. I have 4 children here. 5th grade, 3rd grade, 1st grade, and nursery 2. And I just want to give a disclaimer that I'm not planning on leaving early. I'm just from Florida, so my blood hasn't thickened yet. So I apologize if this is rude, but I just need to.
No, it's like, oh, it's so comfortable.
It's freezing.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm Shimmy Trencher. In terms of my biological kids, I have a son who's in 10th grade, and I have 2 alumni from Birmingham Academy, ages 18 and 20. And I am here also. I'm here at the parent advisory as a parent and as the interim principal of the university.
And I actually have 4 alums, so I knew it, right?
Was more
Anyone
than 4?
else?
It's not a competition.
But I didn't get to say it.
Okay.
I thought maybe.
Okay, so thank you so much for coming. I'm going to start off with a very brief Torah. We are, after all, an Orthodox Jewish school, so it's nice to really start us off with a Torah thought. I love the character of Avraham Avinu, who we are being introduced to and learning more about in these Torah portions that we're reading this time of year. And Avram's an interesting character. He's called Avraham HaIvri. And Rashi comments, Ivri means the whole world was on one side, he was on the other side. And the word Ivri is used multiple times through Sefer Bereshit. It's used, I think, around 7 times. Mostly refer to Avram. Later on, Yosef is called Ivri at a certain point. And then we move into Sefer Shemot, where we're introduced to Bnei Yisrael. So the Jewish people aren't just individuals, but now they acquire this identity as this community of people with shared values, shared heritage. So what's interesting at the start of Shemot, where all of a sudden the narrative shifts to using the word Ivri again. We're introduced to these the Mialdot, the midwives, in the story of the birth of Moshe, and of course they don't listen to Paro and they do their own thing, and it describes them as Ivriot. And it actually uses the word Ivri more times in that section than the entire Sefer of Bereshit, the entire book of Bereshit. And one idea behind that is that Abraham had this character trait of standing out. He had his values and he was willing to stand out on his own. So even as the Jewish people, even as we kind of come together and form a group, we still have the importance for us to be part of the group, but then to have the ability, when we're in various places where we need to do so, to step out and represent ourselves and be very much an individual with our values. So I think that's an interesting message in terms of Avraham Avinu, and I think it's really what we want for our kids. We send our kids, our children to this school to be part of something larger than themselves, to connect with the community, and then of course to be part of the Jewish people. And this is sort of a microcosm of the Jewish people for their school community. And then of course we know that there are a couple people here with a lot of alumni, but I don't want to freak anyone out who doesn't have any alumni yet. But then there comes that time where our kids step out into the world. They step out of that community, and they're not always with Bnei Yisrael, but wherever they go, we want them to have this quality of being an Ivri, taking who they are and what they've gained, and being able to stand and represent even when they're on their own. So it wasn't as short as I thought, but he was a good effort.
Great.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so this is actually my first parent advisory meeting, so I'm very excited. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. I had a chance to talk to Roy Trencher and Ms. Roberts earlier today, and sort of ask them about these kinds of meetings, because I'm obviously bringing in my own experiences from my former school in terms of how we would run these meetings and just making sure that our norms are aligned, because I didn't want to speak out of turn. But we are on the same page, so I'm just kind of framing the meeting. I'm just going to create some norms, which is, I'm actually really excited by some of the topics that have come up. I think they're going to lead to some really productive discussion tonight, and I think you'll learn a lot about either our philosophy or our plans. Having said that, it's also very tempting, since we all just went around the table and talked about all of our wonderful children, how many children we have here. It also could be very tempting in a forum like this to all of a sudden speak from the perspective of, well, my child told me that this, or I'm having an issue with this, you know, or my child's having an issue with this teacher. This is not the forum for those kinds of conversations. I would advise you that if you did come here with the hope of having a conversation that pertains to your specific child or a specific instance for your child, to please approach one of us afterwards, and we will certainly make note of it, and we can either discuss it tonight or even follow tomorrow. But you know, we will try to stick to the agenda, but also speak about it from the perspective of really trying to get an understanding of where we are as a school and where our plans are as a school.
Thank you. I'm also going to pass these around. So that way, and it looks like a lot of people here came with pens. For those who did not, we've got things moving, especially if you submitted a topic that you don't see here on the agenda. Feel free to write that down, and we'll pass them out. And we want to try to get to as many as possible. And if there's something that we want to have a broader discussion on, and we don't have time fully tonight, then we will figure out how to make sure that we can address that.
The pretzels are part and the cookies are dairy.
Most important.
Those are more.
And the grapes?
There were more topics. We did receive more. Unfortunately, we couldn't get them all on this agenda, but if we have time, that's where the open questions are, and then thinking about the future, whether it's going to be at the upper school advisory that we have that discussion, or we need a different kind of meeting for that kind of topic. So it's not that we were ignoring you. We really appreciate all of the questions that came to us.
And could I ask if you received questions for people that are not, that you don't see here, if you wouldn't mind writing those down, because they may be here on the live stream, so I want to make sure that they're included.
Oh, you
at the
mean
end.
text it.
Right.
Do we know if it's working?
Yes.
It's working.
It is working, and actually I've already gotten texts to people letting me know that they are they're on. So we are live.
Are there any more agendas? Sure.
So I'm going to help you, Shibby, by keeping you on time.
Yes.
To make sure that we get to all the topics
Yes.
that we that are here.
You know, yeah, as you see, there's some rambling going on. Keep things good. Okay,
I didn't mean that just for you. But you want to.
but I am aware. I like to talk. Okay. So one of the topics that came up was tefillah. It's something that we come back to again and again. It's such an important part of our program. And of course, as we've talked about here before, really trying to find the right balance and create the right environment is a challenge for all. I mean, we go to these conferences, and that's what people are talking about at these education conferences. How do we engage our students? How do we create the right environment? So we've done a lot, and we have a lot in place, really new approaches for this year and new systems in place. So I want to just very briefly share with you our philosophy, what we are doing, and then open it up to hear some of your thoughts and concerns. You may have great ideas, you may have questions. I'll try to keep the presentation part brief so we can get to the discussion. So first of all, the question is, what is the purpose of tefillah in schools? Because I think there are people that say, look, the traditional approach was like, look, we have an obligation to daven, so we need to have davening in school because all these students should be davening. So they're not going to go to an early minyan, so we're going to do it here. But it's not just that we have an obligation to daven, so let's have a minyan in school. We believe that really it's the school's obligation to, first of all, demonstrate the importance of making tefillah a set part of our routine, and also to teach students about tefillah and to create opportunities for students to find meaning and create their own meaning around their tefillah experiences. So what we did this year is we kind of took a lot of what we've been doing for the past few years and we divided it up into two separate initiatives. So the first initiative I call, I'll say, sur meira. In other words, avoiding the negative. In other words, we're talking about decorum, we're talking about attendance, we're talking about making sure that that students are where they're supposed to be and behaving in a way that is respectful. And on the other hand, we look at the asay tov, which is, okay, if we can get all the students there and they're quiet, that's not like a huge win. If they're completely not engaged and we force them into it and they're sitting there saying like, wow, I hate this. I can't wait till I graduate because I'm never doing this again. So what we did is we separated those two and we actually put sort of different teams in charge of them. So the people that are focused on enhancing the experience, that's their focus. People that are working on the sort of making sure that there's sort of law and order are doing that and they're working together, but we wanted to make sure that neither piece of that got lost. So I'll start with the second, which I don't know, to me is a little bit more exciting and vibrant, how to make Tefillah a great experience for our kids. So the first thing is, this year for the first time we have Tefillah coordinators, we have people on staff who who we've hired to oversee this effort, and they're Rabbi Buxbaum and Mrs. Isser. And they're really taking the lead on this. And the second thing that we did, which of course I managed to not photocopy, is we have expanded the options for Tefillah for the students. And third, we are, after the mission, we're introducing a Tefillah community assembly. So about every 6 weeks, we're going to be getting together with students in small groups, and we're going to be talking about Tefillah and sharing insights with them. It won't be very long, but we're going to try to go through Tefillah and find aspects of Tefillah that we can highlight and discuss with students. And fourth, we are going to be introducing student-integrated Tefillah into the main minyan, so students will be getting up and sharing some of their own insights throughout davening. So that is initiative number 2. Initiative number 1 is that Mrs. Zagi has taken charge of following up with students, because the truth of the matter is, if we say Tefillah is important, and then we have a school where you don't even have to show up and nobody notices, that clearly is not sending the right message. So what we're doing is we do take attendance, we do keep track of the students who are there and what they're doing. That information is collected by Mrs. Zagi every day, and then she follows up with students, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So to help us with decorum, we have created seating charts for both the girls' side and the boys' side. On the girls' side, we had a lot of success last year in terms of really being thoughtful about where students are sitting. So it might not be best if 3 ninth graders who are best friends and love to talk to each other are seated all together. So what we try to do is seat students around the room in places where they're basically sitting next to people that they're not friends with. They will, but hopefully not here in Ghana. The guys' side was a little bit more challenging, so we put a seating chart in place this year. Still has some kinks to work out. You discover who has become friends when you do this. You didn't think were friends before. And again, the goal was to try to get quiet by just setting up an environment that fostered that, even before we got to the need to follow up with students. What can we do systemically to create the right environment? The next thing we did is we created zones. We have a number of staff who are with us for davening. So we situated ourselves around the room in different locations, and each of us takes a little area. So we're responsible for, 1, making sure that students are seated in the right place. If there are students that wander into our section to have a really important conversation about last night's football game, we can gently kind of like encourage them. I have a sign that encourages them to go back to their seats. Daniel Caesar, many of you know Daniel Caesar. He's one of our alumni who davens with us. He has copies of that sign, and he goes up to kids and he tapes it to their shirt if they're talking and say, please do not talk to me. So again, it's important for the students to know that we are noticing and that we care. And then students who we've spoken to many times and they're really not being respectful, that information goes to Mrs. Zagi and then she'll follow up. In terms of follow-up, and my presentation is just about done. First, she'll have a conversation with the student. Second, she will email parents. She'll have another conversation and the parents will get an email, and they're told, look, if you can't solve this problem, we're going to have some consequences, and by the 3rd time, we have in-school consequences. And we also notify parents of that so they can follow at home. And the truth is, I would say, 85% of our students, they come, and, it's challenging, they may talk here and there, but it's a really, really nice davening environment generally. And then we do have a segment of the student population that really has a lot of trouble. So we're trying to handle it in a respectful way with them, but at the same time letting them know that it's not just about you. There's a room full of people that are trying to daven, there are community norms, and we're going to hold you accountable. So over time, there are kids that are starting to get the message, there are kids that weren't there, that are now there are kids that were talking, that are now not talking. There was one kid that I had to send to Gullus. I had to move the seat all the way to the back corner after asking him 10 times to not talk during one davening. So the kids know that we're following up. So I'd like to open it up for...
Can we tell a little bit about the
Oh,
choice?
we didn't.
Yes,
It's kind of
I made a whole...
They don't have to every Monday and Thursday have to be this whole
Okay.
large
Monday
meeting,
and
right?
Thursday,
They-
but the beautiful thing is that they have choice, and then teenagers don't get a lot of choice in their lives, and this is one place where they are choosing some sort of prayer, some sort of tefillah group that speaks to them.
So here are our options. We have the main minyan that meets in the upper school Beit Midrash every day. Then we have the Kavanah minyan. That's for the students who want to take a little more time and daven more slowly. They start with Mizmor Shir at 8:15, so the kids come a little earlier, so they start a little later in davening, and then they go a little more slowly. Then we have the quiet minyan. The quiet minyan is for kids that want a faster davening. And very, very quiet. But it's really for the kids that want something a little bit faster. Like I happen to like being in a minyan that moves a little bit more quickly. I daven quickly. So their policy is you have to be in by 8:20 because davening is shorter, so you can't really come late. You miss the whole thing. So you have to be in on time. Doors get locked, and it's completely silent. You get evicted if you talk. Like if you're like turn your applications up, you get evicted. So then the third option we have is, and those meet, thanks. Those two meet on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Then we have the NCSY Power Meeting. Rabbi Wilgus from NCSY, he comes in 3 times a week to our minyan that has additional explanations and inspirational thoughts and stories. So he does that 3 days a week. Then we also have the girls davening group. We had a lot of girls who really said, I have the most kavanah when I can daven silently to myself in a very quiet space. We used to call it the cafeteria minyan last year because there were girls who would leave and go and want to daven by the tables outside the cafeteria. So we've given them their own space to do that. Let's see what else we have. Yeah, okay. We also have the women's tefillah group every Rosh Chodesh, where they not only daven. The girls davening group is like a quiet space where they daven. The women's tefillah group on Rosh Chodesh is an act where they actually have a service, and the girls lead, and they can read from the Torah. And this last time we had Dr. Toplowski come in, and they had a musical challah with their guitar.
I think it was the girls' idea, right? We have 2 9th graders, Marshak and Kalanit, running it, which is really exciting, really beautifully run. And I think they invited Dr. Toplowski, and we danced. It was really beautiful.
So I'm gonna cut you guys off.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I'm just going to
5
share the
minutes
last
for
one.
questions
The
on
last
this topic.
one.
Okay.
We have a group of students who decided they wanted to have a Bahav minyan. I'm not a specialist on this, but Bahav is a custom on the first Monday, Thursday, and Monday of Cheshvan and Iyar to have a special minyan with extra slichot that you say about the welfare of the Jewish people, spiritually, physically. So I had a group of over 10 guys and a bunch of girls who wanted to have this extra long special minyan with extra davening, and they did that. We're really trying to create an environment where the kids really the students feel empowered to have all of these different options to create what they want. Thank you.
The comments on the pizzas. It's so funny.
Okay, questions?
Where's the Sparty minion? No, I'm just kidding. That depends on if you have enough Sparty.
Sometimes
Well,
Exactly.
And if they want it, they should.
But we're open to that. Again, that's what it is. It's about really empowering the students to make it their own.
Thank you.
I think this is good to know. I would just, in the future, I would say now that I know we're doing this a little bit, and it would be great if we just knew who was running which mini when, because my daughter, I think, was going to NCSY for a while. She's like, I don't know if the NCSY guy, I had no idea what his name was, so she should know. And maybe that might be on her, that she missed it, if he didn't introduce himself the first day, or if she went another day, but that would just be nice, that way I kind of knew who was leading.
How is the participation in the different minyan, and obviously more on for the boys, but how is that orchestrated?
So we have Gabaim. There are 2 Gabaim per grade who take on different roles. One thing that we do struggle with is that a lot of the students don't want to lead. A lot of the boys, it's the same boys that lead every time and that do the laning. So Rabbi Buxbaum and I are working on some kind of project where we can train more of the students to lead, even if it's just at the end, they do Ashri to the end. And then we're also going to start a rotation for the Divrei Tefillah that involves both the girls and the boys in the naming now. Does that make sense?
It does, and that's a potential solution also to get more people.
Yeah.
Each group has an adult.
A question. For the women's TLA group, is there, it's great that it's student led or student run. Is there faculty sort of support also to help them organize?
So I emailed the girls, I said, do you guys need help rolling the tour? No, we got it. They were so organized. We had a little spreadsheet, everything that needed to get done. Oh, we already did that. But we have, yes, we do have faculty, and then Dr. Topolowski can keep coming.
Yeah, every group has a faculty advisor and student leaders. And they also, all the groups get funding from our student activities budget, do special things, have like a kiddish on Fridays, that type of thing. Because we're Jewish and we should have. And by the way, thank you
So
very
there's,
much.
whether schnapps and herring and everything?
We should have to know that.
Only if you come to my office.
There's people who
Herring? I don't like that idea at all, but okay.
So are they seeing faculty and administrators at Tefillah in one of the different, in the different units?
Yes, in every group, and again, I will not say that it's perfect. We have a number of community members that dial in with us in the morning, so I was asking them, what do you think? And one person actually came to me last week, unsolicited actually. I went up to introduce myself and he said, this document is so nice and it's so quiet, and I'm thinking to myself, I think there's room for improvement here, you know. But again, I'm very sensitive to it. I really want to hold our students to I want to set the bar high. So there's more that we're going to do with the students and conversations that we have, and I'm going to be shifting the seating chart around a little bit more, and hopefully that will help.
Once students select a minion, do they have to stay with that minion, or if they switch? Can they switch? Because if you're tracking attendance, I'm just wondering if they're not in the same place all the time, how do you keep track of the students?
So what we ask them to do is to select their home minion, their home group, for Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And they have a choice to go to whichever one they want on Fridays. And the reason why we wanted them to choose a home group is because when we do these Friday discussion groups, it's going to be based around their group that they done with Tuesday and Wednesday. So the 20 kids that go to the Kavanah minion, they're going to have that learning together in the group of students with whom they dive in on 2 days a week. At the same time, the students said we really do want some options, so we made Friday, Friday you go wherever you choose. And the way technically the way we do it is on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, there are lists where they check in by their name. They also sign it on the iPads, that's how we do attendance, but they also write their name, and then the faculty member there will take it later on and just check to make sure everyone's there and follow the students who disappear, because sometimes that does happen. And then on Fridays, there's a sign sheet where they just sign all their names, and that all gets cross-referenced. So once again, not a perfect system, but we're kind of tweaking it to really be responsive. And then for Mincha, we take attendance, and then Mrs. Aggie follows up right after Mincha.
Are they the same choice, menu choices for Mincha?
So for Mincha, we have two different choices. We have the main minyan, which is like a Heichi Kedusha, it just starts from Esrei until Kedusha, and then everyone does it to themselves. And then upstairs, we have the Kolam Mincha that does a full repetition, full Chazar shots. So those are our two options. And again, it's something that we've been thinking about. Is that the best model? When you have 170 high school students in a room, and they're coming from class, and they're coming from their lockers, and they're going back, it makes it, I actually think smaller groups is probably better. I think, so it's something that I want to think more about how we're doing Mincha. Because I don't think it's as good as it could be.
Okay, last question.
The girls at Mincha, are there, is that so, like there a mechitzot or a table or something that is acceptable, as opposed to people not being able to be in the room, which I heard was a thing?
Yes. We don't know how, but some of our mechitzot disappeared on September 20th and haven't reappeared. Phil Rodriguez is now scouring the building for them, but we, I don't know, but we avoided, we circumvented that by just buying some new partitions, so we're good for now. But yes, there was a machitza disappearing issue that has now been solved.
Doors being closed and girls not being included.
Yeah, we've worked that out.
Glad that.
I know it's worked out because I don't daven there, but I get a list every day of both the boys that are there and the girls, and there are names on both those lists. So.
Okay, let's go to topic 3, Safa.
Okay, topic 3. Okay, here we go. Again, I'll do an introduction to our philosophy, what we're doing, and then we'll have a conversation. Okay. It's important to realize it used to be that we were talking about cell phones, but now we're really talking about technology in general, because the students have Chromebooks or laptops, and for most of them, there's nothing or almost nothing that you can do on a phone that you can't do on your laptop. So don't have your phones. They're getting their iMessages on their laptop, or their WhatsApp, or that's connected with their phone, that is in their bag, or in their locker, or whatever it is, and their GChat and all that kind of thing. So it really is a broader issue of, we brought technology into the classroom, they have other technology that they bring with them. What do we do with that? And I think philosophically, we understand, bless you, that technology is and will be a vital part of our children's lives, not on a daily basis, but really like on an hourly basis. Probably less than that. I think if I track the amount of time per day that I'm away from technology, it would be interesting for us to figure that out. Really, it's really pervasive, and it is going to be for them in terms of work, home, for their whole lives. So I feel like it's our responsibility as a school to teach our students how to be thoughtful about their technology use and to help them to self-monitor. So we've provided guidelines for teachers about technology in general. The biggest challenge for us was that 2 years ago when we introduced the Chromebooks, there were, teachers really felt like we have this technology now, we need to use it, and we had students who had their Chromebooks and their laptops open for every class for the entire class, and it was a huge distraction. So we really spent a lot of time with professional development at the end of last year, beginning of this year, really talking about how teachers can use technology, and also giving teachers permission to say, you can say to the students, laptops closed, Chromebooks closed, you don't need them right now. And teachers, by and large, have really happily embraced that approach. You walk into classes and you see students that are using them for specific projects, for group work. At the same time, there are a lot of times where you walk in and those devices are not open. So teachers have become much more comfortable being directive about when and how those can be used. And do you want to talk about cell phones for a bit?
And yeah, I was just going to say also in monitoring. So if the laptops are open, teachers are trying to just be more present in the room and make so that the kids do know that we're watching them. And I sit in the back of classrooms a lot, and if there's the laptops are open and someone's on a different site, and they know I'm there, I don't know why, they they're on a different site, but I'll send them a little message and have a nice little conversation about what they're doing. But it's hard, just like it's hard for us. So we are trying to, we don't want to take technology away. There's so many wonderful things to do in the classroom and just to be able to use it mindfully. So as far as cell phones, we have, every class has a bin, and the teacher is not directed to, but can collect cell phones. So it's something that we're leaving it up to the teachers, and some teachers do it. A lot of the teachers feel like it's a little bit invasive. In most classes, and I think in all classes, the cell phones are not out though. And if you see a cell phone out, the teacher will either gently say to a student, please put that away, or if you have to take it out, I'll have to take it, or something like that. And so the cell phones tend to be put away. They, of course,
They do appear.
they appear, and we are noticing, or it's really hard. So they do, if they get a text, so there will be a student who leaves the class to go look at a text. And I was thinking about, I was telling Rabbi Trencher that when we were in school, we were writing notes. I don't know if you guys did, but we wrote a lot of notes and we threw them across the room and we were passing notes and we were trying to interact with our friends. And now it's a little bit easier, but they do have the world to interact with. So we're just encouraging teachers to be really present and try to notice what the kids are doing.
Here's the analogy that we were talking about. So I know that some families have like a practice, like at dinner time, like everyone takes their phone and like leaves it like in another room. So in our family, we got to the point where everybody had cell phone and they were all there. And we just said, look, you don't need to put it in another room, but at dinner time, we are bonding as a family and we're not communicating with other people. So keep your phones out of sight. And of course, look, I'm gonna plead the fifth, but sometimes there are certain people in the family that might forget, or something will beep, and then what happens? Wait, what are you doing? Put that away. So I feel like that's really the approach that we've taken in the classroom. Teachers will let the students know that cell phones are distracting and inappropriate. If they see them, ask them to put it away. And I think, look, it's still an issue. I think I was talking to students today and asking them. I said, we're going to be discussing this at the parent advisory meeting, and do you use your cell phone? And I asked different students, and the students said, yeah, sometimes I'll have my laptop up like this, and I'll text on here, and then, but I don't find it like so distracting. Like I know like there are times like sometimes it is, but like I know to put it away. I asked another student, she said, yeah, well sometimes I will, but like a lot of times I really need to focus and pay attention. So I think we need to be having more of those conversations with students, quite frankly, about being thoughtful and about setting guidelines for themselves. So that's the current state of affairs with cell phones. So in terms of our conversation, what are you hearing from your students regarding what they see as the challenges of technology for them? In school, what are you hearing out of school as well? I know it's a big issue. I see it. I saw my kids in terms of getting their work done. I spent 3 hours in this assignment. No, you spent 15 minutes and 2 hours and 45 minutes doing something. So, and what do people think about what we're doing in school, and what are you thinking, and how can we incorporate your thoughts into our discussions going forward? This is the part we just have like a moment, like a minute, like awkward silence for like the first grade person.
I was looking at myself. Can you repeat that?
No, I did notice there are people using their cell phones. Yeah, people. Yeah,
It's a challenge, right?
it is.
So
It's huge.
It's a huge challenge everywhere, every school.
Yeah, the question really is, the cat's out of the bag. We're not getting the cat back in the bag, and like, what more could we do to really help the students in ways that like we were never helped? This sort of was sprung on us as we were adults, and I found myself struggling with technology all the time. I'm going online to look something up. Next thing I know, it's like half an hour later, and like, why am I on Facebook? I'm wondering, and I'm thinking, and we're thinking about what more can we do as a community. Let me have the event, like the screen.
What percentage of teachers do you think sit up front at a desk and don't walk around the classroom these days. Because I think that's one of the answers is that it's more interactive and the kids are finding that it's a lot more interesting online, whatever they're doing, shopping or even doing the work, but on their own, than the teacher up front speaking. So I think the engagement piece is a significant.
That's huge, actually, because I'm thinking about what one student said today when I asked her, and she said, there are certain classes where I can't even think about pulling out my phone because I will miss something important. And there are other classes, I'll use it when I'm bored. I think that's a really good point, in as much as we can really work with teachers, and teachers can work on their lesson planning, on developing really really engaged lessons and really engaged teaching. I think that's really probably more than just talking about it, probably a really important goal.
We also, I think, want to give kids the tools to know how to stop. Like, that's putting it on the teacher, which is great, but I think the lesson, like, when they go to college, no one's going to tell them, walk around one time. So I think, I don't know if there's programs out there, but maybe there's someone can come in and help them work on some of these skill sets. Maybe that's like a Friday assembly. I don't know the answer, it's not my specialty, but I think probably this generation really needs to know. Our kids have Shabbos, which is great, but even that's, we're hearing, is problematic. So, I just think it would be great for kids to understand like what can you do internally, like what can you do, what can you change about yourself to just say, I'm not gonna, like I have a niece who would make her friend change her Facebook password during exams because that was the only way she could control herself from not going on. But so that was a method that actually worked for her. So there's different things, maybe we can give the kids the tools rather than putting it, I agree the teachers should be doing that as well, but kids can learn almost anything on YouTube now, so that's what answer I often get when I say, why didn't you take that? Well, it's on YouTube, I'll just go learn it later.
I remember last time this was discussed, you mentioned that the school was doing some sort of monitoring, like you could see who was on the most, and you made a joke out of it, like, oh, you must have done great things at the store, but, because you hinted to them, I see you're on 20 hours a day, and you were able to do that. Is the school still monitoring the kids' research of the technology during school?
We can. There's so much data. It's amazing. We can, and the times where we will use it is like when there's a student who the teacher feels is like very distracted, and every time they walk by, they're really good at like switching tabs. So again, sometimes like a teacher will say, like, you tell me like, I would like to trust them, but I'm not sure. And sometimes we do that. I think that the walking around approach and the engagement lessons is probably even more effective. But yes, we can. And we
I'm not suggesting I'm asking like, are you?
Yeah, we can.
Two things. One is small thing. I probably everybody knows this already, but the reports I get is that kids also wear the earbuds, but you can't see it. So because covering them, there's a lot of stuff listening to. No one can tell they're listening to it because you have the wires and so that's why.
They're wearing the earbuds in class.
They're earbuds, yeah. So they can be like watching a movie or something.
That's more effective.
Just a little
than
heads
long
up
hair.
about that.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's good to know. It's good to know. And then the mission's coming up. So I'm wondering what kind of thinking is going into technology use on the mission, because here they've got this great opportunity. Anybody talking to them about, are you going to be WhatsApping your friends back in the States instead of looking out the window on the bus?
I thought the last
we
mission
have a
was allowed to
conversation
use
about
their
that.
phones. Weren't they not allowed to? People didn't have international
Yeah,
plans.
it's hard
and
not
they
to
didn't have
use
them.
our phones.
We rented those little
Now-
Nokia phones.
And now most kids
It's
didn't
also
have
their
them.
camera, it's their camera, it's their video.
Now everyone
But
has
any
data.
conversation going on about technology and the mission specifically?
So I learned something a few years back. Like for the NCSY summer programs, they have this event called Yom NCSY. If anyone's seen it, where they bring together all 2,000 students that are on their Israel summer programs. They have this huge concert and event, and they really want the students to be present, kids to be present. And I was watching this live stream, and the person running it got up and he said, "Everybody, take out your cell phones. Go on Snapchat, use this Instagram, use this hashtag." And I realized what they were doing. They were essentially using the teens' desire to be on their phones and kind of co-opting it to make it complementary rather than something that takes away. And we're kind of thinking about how to do that, and how to use the technology on the mission. So they're taking pictures of their friends and posting on some board, and we can send them messages. So I think that's our thought, because telling them, you can tell them, I want to put away your phones, but like you said, it's not their phone, it's their camera. You know, it's the way that they're going to communicate with their friend on the other bus and say, you know, hey, I think I left something in the room, did you see my, whatever, you know what I'm saying? So we're giving a lot of thought to how to do that, but it's a really, really good point.
Okay, last question.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of bring it back to how some of the conversation started about what's the responsibility of parents and the school versus the students themselves. And we realize they're students, they're teenagers. This is a part of their life where they don't know certain things. They don't have the judgment that they're going to have when they're older, and it's the time for us to figure out how to teach them responsibility. It's why there are laws about no texting while driving. Because if it left to their own devices, right, we would make poor decisions and cause bodily harm. So there's other situations when judgment sometimes can't be left to the student to just say, well, I'll just figure out when to use it in class or when not to use it, and we'll let them figure it out. I think it's our responsibility, through many of the great suggestions and programs, to figure out how to give them guidance, and rather than saying, well, let them figure out when they're bored in class or when this or when that. I mean, there are some good, very good
Cell phones
suggestions.
are not in class though, right? No, you don't have, they're not supposed to have.
But they are.
Yeah, even if they don't have their cell phones, they have everything on their phone,
Everything's
on their computer.
Computers are often close.
They text, they WhatsApp.
But they are, and the example, there are students who are watching movies.
Right.
There are students who have watched entire series of Netflix, on Netflix in class. It has happened.
Faldo's okay. If it's a Hebrew class, it's Faldo.
It's in Hebrew. It's educational.
Right.
Okay. Again, so what are the guidelines? And we don't know the answers today, but so what are the guidelines, and how do we develop the guidelines for what they could be? And what role do we have as parents? What role does the school have? What can we do to help? What do you need? And we're happy to participate and help. But if there's help that you need, then please let us know.
One thing is not to answer your kids' shopping list when they send it to you during English class.
We certainly respond and say, "Why are you on your phone?"
Yeah. Except when you want them, they then suddenly
No.
They're not
When students first started having devices at my previous school, I was in my office and I had to look up something on Facebook, like something on some picture, I don't remember what it was. And I go, and all of a sudden, like a Facebook message pops up. Hey, Rabbi. I'm like, you're down the hall, you're in class, what are you doing? Oh, yeah. Really, sometimes they're just not thinking. I think there are things that we can do to tweak the classroom to make it less of an issue. I think there are things that we can do in terms of the conversations about students who make mistakes, and I also think there's a learning component where we, as a school, have an obligation to figure out how to raise students' level of awareness of the issue and to develop strategies.
College guidance, let's see if we can do that in a little bit less time.
Okay, so in terms of college guidance, I would love to know what are the questions, can we flip it and start with the questions that people have? Because I feel like we do a lot of talking.
And mine is not listed at A or B, but is what is available to the freshmen and sophomores as lowerclassmen. I know that critical times, sophomores, seniors, and juniors now, December or whatever, applications, recommendations, blah, blah, blah. So obviously it would come, I wouldn't think that it would come the first half of the year. What is available to them for college guidance, not career, but college?
Okay, so. Oh, great, let's collect questions. Awesome, okay. So freshman and sophomore, what's available?
Any other burning questions on college guidance?
There was somebody.
wait a minute, hold on,
There's something
I
about
got a request for
selective
people to speak
university.
louder.
Oh, yes.
And, okay, wait, I'm sorry, I missed this, I wanna go back to this, because, I missed this, there's a question about the, cell phones. Can we, let the kids know the expectation is the phone stays away during class time? Yes, the universal policy in the school is that students should not be using their cell phones in class unless the teacher requests it, like they're doing some kind of poll or something, which would be very rare. So, what is the policy concerning teachers' use of cell phones during classroom time? You wanna talk about that?
Sure. I don't bring my cell phone to class, so it would be strange, I feel like, to have one. But we have an app now where they can take attendance on their cell phones, and the teachers love it. So they're using it now to take attendance, and it's really quick. So they have them, and they put them away. Like, their phones shouldn't be out. They're not getting phone calls. They're not getting messages. They may, while students are doing something, check email here and there on their computers. But I wouldn't expect anyone to have a phone.
Going back to the college guidance, one of the questions we did get was about, there's a selective school night, and what is a selective school, first of all, define that. And also, why do we only have it for those schools, why don't we have a night for parents across in general?
And that's directly
Which is going to
connected
like, what
to
does
the question
freshmen and
about
sophomores, right?
freshmen and sophomores, yeah. Any other questions? Otherwise, I can address those, and then as people have more thoughts or questions, you can kind of add them. So, what we're doing right now is looking at our college guidance program and trying to identify where are the places where we feel we could provide more value and that we could do a better job. So, looking at so we look at a number of categories of schools to which our students apply. We look at a school like University of Maryland, where the acceptance rate is 44%, and every year ours is between usually 73 and 85%, so that's pretty good. We look at schools like YU and Stern that our students apply to, and we have a great record there. We look at a number of other schools, Brandeis, BU, Rutgers, and we feel really confident that our students are well prepared for those schools and for the admission process with those schools, and for having the best opportunity for acceptance based on whether it's right for them. So looking at the selective schools, by selective schools I would say schools that accept 25%, and there's no specific definition, but schools that accept 25% or less of applicants. So for our students, those are the Ivy League schools, MIT, Wash U, University of Chicago, Michigan. That's so we do have students that are applying to Penn, to Cornell, and to MIT. And I felt, looking at the data and speaking with Alana Hoffman, that we could be doing more and providing more information to those students and families to give them the best shot at admissions and success at those universities. Actually, I don't think success is an issue. I think it's an issue of admissions. Any of our students last year that applied to Penn would be successful there. They accept 8% of applicants. So I would like as many of our students to be in that 8% as possible. And looking at their resumes, and looking at their extracurricular activities, looking at a number of other factors, we were seeing that there are things that we could be doing differently. So, and this is the group for whom the information needs to be obtained early. As opposed to the students applying to University of Maryland, where yes, I think that it would be helpful if there are certain things that we could do and we'd like to kind of push down to 10th grade and 9th grade. It's always a balance for those students. You know, 9th graders are basically middle schoolers in high school. They're just trying to figure out their schedule and how to study for those tests and how to balance, how to be a high high schooler. I'm not sure I want a lot of those students worrying about college. At the same time, there is some more information we can probably provide. But the place where I felt, and in speaking with Alana, that it was vital that we provide more information now was for the students that are applying to those selective schools. Because we know what those selective schools are looking for, and we can guide parents and students with that. So that's why we started with this selective schools program for parents and for students in 9th to 11th grade and their parents. I anticipate we will be expanding that to do more with 9th and 10th graders in an age-appropriate way. Some of the conversations that we want to have with 9th graders are about their elective choices in 10th grade. Is it right for them to take an AP or an academic elective or a non-academic elective? We'd want to talk with 9th graders and students that start at 10th grade about how they make choices about their extracurricular activities. But when it comes to the selective schools, there are other pieces that are much more important. And if you want, I can give you a preview of that if people are interested. But I would encourage anyone who's interested and wants that information to come to that program, which is, I believe, about a week and a half. We have a lot of information.
November 5th, 7th, 8th.
We have a lot of information that will be very, very valuable to those students in terms of planning their 10th and 11th and 12th grades and the application process.
I think that's great. I think even though freshmen are essentially middle schoolers, as you said, like your 9th grade grades count towards your GPA and your, part of your consideration whether you're going to be admitted to a college. So it's a fine line, like you said, because you don't want to freak them out. But on the other hand, it counts as much as your sophomore grades or your junior grades.
Yeah, it's interesting because we do tell the 9th graders at freshman orientation, right, this is high school, your grades do count. And I think as getting into certain colleges has become much more challenging, there are far more applicants. The schools are looking at freshman year in a way that they might not have a number of years ago. So it is important information, but I think at the same time, you can tell 9th graders that, but they don't even necessarily. College is so far away that I think we need to be focused on in the moment if a student isn't doing well. We say to a freshman, oh, you don't want to see because it's not going to look good for colleges. I think it's much more about like, you're not learning effectively, how can we support you and what can you do? I think that's, but again, I think that it might not be the students who need that information at 9th grade, it might be the parents who want it more so they can think ahead. But part of the issue for us is also a resource issue. We have one college guidance counselor who works very, very, very hard. Rabbi Kestan and I have been discussing that with Alana Hoffman. Do we need to try to allocate more resources or hire additional staff?
Yes.
So that's.
I think that's a good idea. And in addition, some of this could be written up. Like there could be on the website, a place to go to know this. As a 9th grade, I think it's a lot more of it is for 9th grade parents, thinking about their kids going into high school and what their career is going to look like. And at what point do you start talking to your kid about SAT 2s, which ones will they need? And we're going to wait until the kids come home and tell us, and by then maybe they miss the opportunity to go for lunch and learn it, or get the book that they need, or whatever it is. I think parents feel like they might need more of a guidebook to what to expect in high school, and when are the different things that are going on that they should be aware of to talk to their kids about.
It's a good suggestion, right? Because if you're going to tell 100 parents the same thing 100 times, just write it down.
Yeah, and have it as a guidebook for what to expect. And it changes. There might be some additions, but
I also like that because every day I practically hear the different GPA you need in order to get into Maryland. So it's like if there's some sort of guidebook and it's refreshed every year based on Maryland statistics or YU statistics or IB statistics last year, you should expect your child will need to get X or need to participate in Y.
Yeah, so I've got this here if people want to look at it. I printed out a few copies of the junior year college counseling handbook. What I'm hearing is this is great. However, if the first time you're seeing this, is at towards the end of January of 11th grade year, I think, you know, a lot of people are gonna feel like they're behind the 8 ball. If I knew some of this beforehand, in a way that's appropriate for each particular grade, I think people would have more of a confidence that they know what's going on and know how to make those choices. So yes, yes.
Another suggestion, just because I've seen this with the children who've gone through this alone, is that the college guidance, the people who work in the colleges themselves can be very helpful, and it's actually can be really informative for people who are interested in more selective schools, or in Maryland also, to whoever they are, to actually visit to the school even before 11th grade. Because if you go on one of these visit days, the speakers themselves are very helpful. They give you more general guidance about college and college application. They don't always specify it to their own school. They can be like, it's specific to which school you go to. But that can also be like a reminder of, oh, that school in 2 years is going to be looking for, maybe they don't care about 9th grade so much. Maybe this one does. Maybe they want to see that you just tried the hardest class or whatever. They give you a whole pitch. But sometimes just they themselves can be a resource to learning about what to expect for college. You don't have to do the college visit at the end of 11th grade. You can do it in 10th grade if you want to, if that's a family concern.
So I want to quickly speak to that. A couple of things that we just touched upon. One is when I was teaching and actually started my administrative path as an assistant principal, I was actually at an upper school in North Miami Beach, and Hill North Miami Beach was actually one of the largest Tuesday schools in the country, actually preschool through 12th grade. And I worked primarily in the upper school, but a little bit in the middle school as well. And that school had a tremendous amount of guidance counselors who followed the kids, and their model was you got a guidance counselor who was also your college path person from 9th grade going all the way through. When I grew in my administrative career and I went to LA to Shalhevet, which is another preschool through 12th grade, and worked very closely in the upper school, and also taught in the upper school, and was administrating the upper school. That model was, there was one college guidance counselor. So I actually have a national cohort now of heads of schools from around the country that I can, on a listserv that I can email, and I've been emailing them, basically trying to get a sense nationally if there's a national norm for a ratio of how many students they got to college counselors. And I can tell you that I'm very much committed, and we've already begun this conversation about the resources that we believe we need to invest in the college guidance process to make sure that our students get the kind of attention they need and the kind of resources they need. The second topic that you brought up, I'm already not just exposed to, but I'm actually I'm a big believer in that relationships are key. So I've already made my way over to University of Maryland, met with our regional person, we are part of her region. I've met with her, asked her a lot of questions, both about how our students fare and the perception of the Berman students and the Berman grads, as well as asked her to either confirm or debunk some rumors that I'm hearing about that it's getting incredibly difficult to get accepted into Maryland, and that they want more out-of-state kids for the tuition and things like that I've been hearing. And some of the things that she shared with me were actually very reassuring, such as legally they're required to 70% of each class has to be in-state. So that was very reassuring, that they can't just go after out-of-state money. And other things that she shared with me were also affirming that there are many more applicants to University of Maryland because it is really becoming more of a top-tier school with a great Jewish community, and many people want to go there, not just locally but nationally. So there's, so it is certainly competitive. I've already been in touch with the Dean of Admissions at YU, and my goal is, obviously I'm in year one, I'm trying to stay on campus as much as I can and visit as many of our classrooms, but at the same time trying to get out of my office and in our building and trying to build the relationships for our students to make sure that people know who Berman grads are and how they fare, and make sure that they are attractive, so when they see a Berman transcript, that actually would go to the top of their mind.
And in addition to that, thank you, in addition to that, both Alana Hoffman and I, once we're past the mission and some of the early college deadlines, will also be going on road trips to different schools, meeting with our representatives. We met with the Penn representative when she came here, with University of Maryland representative, and really, both in terms of building the relationship so we can speak with them about our students, and also, again, to get information from them to help guide us. We just revised our college profile that describes our school that we sent to all colleges. The University of Maryland rep helped us with a couple of questions that we wanted answered about what we should highlight, what was important, what were they looking for. And again, we're really trying to build those relationships as well.
So I want to save time for other questions and be aware that we have a lot of people watching live stream, young and old.
Yes. Yes, by the way, you should just know that a lot of students love watching this. They come in the morning like, oh yeah, I love what you said last night, blah, blah, blah. Like,
So,
okay.
just so the students know, we are not taking away their computers.
By the way, a question came up, are you concerned it's too late for juniors and seniors? I would say that generally speaking, in terms of the college process, absolutely not. When it comes to the selective schools, however, if a student gets to senior year and they're like, I want to go to Penn, and you're looking at their list of extracurricular activities, and there's not much there, you know, that is going to be an issue. So again, that's why, specifically with that cohort, we're starting with them in terms of providing more information. Okay, let's see here. Are there only two?
Three.
Three? Oh, there's three.
Here's
Oh,
more.
here comes more.
Oh,
nice. You should be on the frisbee team.
We have great energy here.
Aerodynamics.
Okay, policy for timing to return tests. We have let all of our teachers know that we would like them to return tests within 1 week. The far range, the longest amount of time before they return a test for an essay should be 2 weeks. Teachers were told that if they have a problem, they run into a problem and they can't meet that deadline, they should be letting us know about that before we hear it from anybody else. So that is a shift for us as a school. We never made that statement before to teachers. We're always like, hey, do your best, it should be within 2 weeks. It is really our expectation teachers get the work back.
How is that conveyed? How's the policy conveyed to the teachers?
We told them, just like we're saying now, and then we emailed them to remind them. And
I just wrote it down to remind them again.
Again, I don't feel like there are any of our teachers who will be like, you know what, getting feedback to the students, that's not that important. I'd like to go watch some TV right now. Again, I think teachers can become busy with lesson planning or various things. If you've got a stack of 50 essays to read and you're plodding through them. So again, it's about us reiterating to teachers how important it is to give the feedback, to give it in a timely manner, and for them to know that if they are having difficulty, please let us know so we can figure out how to support you. What does that teacher need to be more effective in ensuring that feedback is timely? And again, if you're hearing that something isn't working, feel free to be in touch with the teacher. Hey, Johnny hasn't gotten his test back, when do you expect to have it back? Or let us know and we'll work to support the teacher. Okay. What is Berman doing? What approach is the school taking to increase the chances of students remaining firm? Okay.
How much time do we have?
It's a great question because I don't think any of us send our students to an Orthodox Jewish school because we really want, like how many of us would be really happy if our students were Bible scholars and had no interest in remaining observant? That would not be a day school win.
So they realized the question is abbreviated, it was a much longer question. And I think this is a topic that many of us are thinking about, talking about all the time. And I think the question really is how to approach it, given kids come to the school and maybe aren't as interested in being from, and those challenges that the school has to face with kids that are. And we've had this discussion here too before, but it seems to come up a lot, and influencing other kids. shop is, all those kind of issues that I think we're all grappling with as a modern Orthodox school is where the question's coming from, so.
Right. My thinking about this issue takes me in four different directions. The first direction is one about curriculum. Are we teaching the right things? The upper school Judaic Studies curriculum was developed, my understanding, and as I see it now, was developed with a very heavy emphasis on textual skills. Our students, in terms of what they can do with text, in terms of Chumash, in terms of Nach, in terms of Gemara, it's really remarkable. At the same time, we don't have any part of our curriculum that focuses in a formalized way on any issues of Hashkafa, Jewish philosophy, Machshav Yisrael, even Jewish law. So, over the course of this year, I've started working with the Judaic Studies staff to really try to step back and ask ourselves that question. Are we teaching the right things that our students need to know to develop not only their own Jewish knowledge, but their own commitment and a full understanding of what it means to be an observant Jewish person? So that's a process that we're undertaking over the course of this year. We've really just started it. The second one is relationships. Are we stressing to our teachers, the Judaic Studies teachers, that it's not just about teaching the knowledge and the skills, but it's about modeling, building relationships? Are we creating the right structures for that to happen? And that has to do with scheduling. It also has to do with just our conversation with them about what it means to be a Lichudei Kodesh teacher in the school. It's interesting, when I did an exercise with the Judaic Studies staff, and I asked them the question, write down a story, describe a time, what does it look like when you did your best work? It was not about, you know what, I stood up in front of the class, and I really taught them a good piece of Gemara, and they were like, wow, that is fantastic. It was all about the connection, the engagement, developing an interest in the student to ask questions and be interested. So again, that tells us that the Judaic Studies staff is feeling this and is looking for that conversation of how to move in that direction, which is amazing. So we're not there yet, but that's what we're thinking. The third aspect is extracurricular activities. How can we be more effective in terms of our Shabbatons and those other experiences that try to inspire students outside the classroom? And then the fourth area is how can we provide additional opportunities for students who are very, very already engaged to become more engaged and to grow, and then how can we use that to bring other students along? And I'm going to give you one example. I'm so proud of the students in this. We have a student in the school who said, we had a conversation about this. The student came to me to say, you know, I'm thinking about how to make the school better in terms of the religious environment. I want to work with the administration, I want to work with the school. And together we talked about it, and he developed an idea that now, every week we're going to have a lunch and learn. Twice a month, it's going to be a teacher from the school is going to talk about a Judaic topic. And the other 2 times a month, Rabbi Wheelers from NCSY is going to come in and do this controversy in 18 minutes. There will be a little food and discussion. So this year was the first one. Rabbi Middleman spoke about the first bracha of Shemona Esrei. 40 students came, and all 7 pies of pizza were eaten, and there were students who unfortunately came and didn't get the pizza. But it tells me that, you know what? Our students want to hear from our teachers. Our students want to learn more about Judaism. They want to grow. And it might not be every student, but as we create that culture, you know, kids get dragged in. Hey, you're going to Rabbi Middleman? Come along. So I think as we go through this year and really think about this issue, those are the 4 places where we're starting. Now, those might not be the only places, but that's where we're starting.
Lizzie, you also, I think, were interested in negative influence of some kids.
Was my question.
No, I think when you
Yeah.
were right. So we could talk, should we talk about that another time? Was that what part of that question or no? Maybe another time.
Yeah,
Okay.
oh no,
That's a big
hold on.
Oh, right. There's more.
We can go to the next question.
Oh, great.
Perfect segue.
Good.
Are there clearly defined implications for drug use, and what are they? And not just drug use, juuling. For those of you who don't know, and I can't assume everybody knows, juuling, it's the latest challenge, I think, for teens in this country and for schools, and for school administrators. Juuling is like an e-cigarette that looks like a little flash drive. It has these little pods that go in, and each pod, it has like, it's like flavored nicotines, they have different flavors, and each pod has like the equivalent of,
A pack of cigarettes.
what's that? It's a pack of cigarettes. And it's very unobtrusive, so kids have them in their pockets, and they'll go into the bathroom, and like, I don't think you call it take a hit, you know, but you like do your Juul thing. And I was reading articles online, and school administrators are dealing with kids that like have it in their shirt sleeves. I'm just like, you know, when the teacher turns around. It is something that we know our percentage of our students do.
In school?
Not regularly, but yes. Yes, it's definitely happening in school. I mean, there were kids who were suspended last year, so I know that, yes. It's really kind of hard to piece because we're not following kids to the bathroom stalls to see what they're doing, and we're not searching their pockets. But it is out there. Again, I can obtain certain numbers by going up to students and saying, yeah, you know, I think there are definitely like 5 kids in the school who like do that, and they're like, no, and they start going like this. You know, so it seems to be a little bit less than 10% who would do this. It's a much smaller number of kids that do have it in school, but there are kids that are. And again, what are the consequences? To me, it's like playing Russian roulette. Like if you're gonna do something that could potentially get you into trouble, and you do it once, you're probably not gonna get caught. Once you do it 10, 20 times, you get into the habit, it's just a matter of time. And that, again, that's what happened last year with students. They just get not smart about it. And somebody sees them in the parking lot, you know, somebody sees them go off to the side, you know, or like sneak into the auditorium, what are you doing there? And what we do for that is we just say, look, this is a safety issue, and that student gets a suspension. The first time they do it, it won't be on the record, we won't send it to colleges, but if it's the kind of thing where a student continues with that behavior, then it would be a suspension that goes to colleges. So that's for juuling, that would be for smoking cigarettes, anything with tobacco. It also includes e-cigarettes that don't have tobacco, which we have also had, which is not as dangerous, it's not healthy. It's just a counterculture kind of behavior that we don't want to encourage. And we did have students last year who were suspended for that as well. We do take drug and alcohol use more seriously. Drug use in school would be an expulsion, or what we would call a suspension, probably through the end of the year. Those kids are potentially eligible to come back based on certain parameters. And then there's the issue of student behavior outside of school. And we've discussed that here. Last year we had a discussion. To what extent is the school obligated to kind of reach into the community and into the students' personal lives, understanding that yes, it's their personal lives, at the same time they're part of a community, and their behavior does affect the school and other students. So we do still have the random drug testing, which we do. And if a student is found to come positive, then they'll be put on probation and they are retested on a regular basis at their own expense. And they also have to get some kind of drug and alcohol counseling. And again, that does happen it's not a huge issue in terms of marijuana in school, but it does happen and their kids do get involved. If at that point they can't remain clean, then we would ask them to leave the school. And that's happened as well. So I hope that answers the question. I feel, I'll say something about my approach to discipline, which is that I feel like there are certain lines in a school, there are certain places where there are discussions, and where there's progressive discipline, and then there are certain lines that can't be crossed. And we create guidelines and consequences for those things, so in the moment, where there are all these emotions and it's an individual child you're dealing with, we know what the parameters are and what the consequence is. And drug use is one of those places. At the same time, I am very sensitive to the fact that these are our children. It might not be our individual biological child, and I'm sure any of us who have had those types of experiences with our own kids or have friends who have know how painful it is for them as well. So I'm very sensitive when applying a disciplinary infraction to not make it public. There are people who would say, let everybody know, because then other kids, it will help, you know, serve as a deterrent for other kids. I'm very passionate about the fact that discipline is applied. If those kids talk about it, if other kids talk about it, that's their business. But as a school, I don't feel it's right for us to publicize those things. That has an upside, but it also has a downside in that when these things happen, they don't serve as a deterrent for other kids in the same way. I think it's just a philosophical decision about how to do this.
I mean, I'll answer that and I'll say, you know, if any parent learns that their child is you know, struggling with or dealing with drug abuse, that is an incredibly painful process for a family to go through to figure out how to get their child help. And it is an incredible invasion of privacy for us as a school to take it upon ourselves to publicize that to a community of their peers. So that's certainly our philosophy. You know, it would be violating anybody's privacy. That's our position.
One thing I would also say is that, and I'll say it to people here, people that are watching at home, our guidance counselors are resources. So if parents or students need support and they go through the guidance counselor first, there's no random drug test, the guidance counselors can maintain a level of confidentiality to support students and parents with that type of thing. They have an obligation to let parents know about risky student behavior, but obviously if the parents are approaching the guidance counselor, they can forge that partnership and we can provide resources to support the students. And that information will be shared with the administration.
Are kids going to the guidance counselor? I never hear that from high school. Like, I don't, that's not a boy thing. Are they actually being utilized? Middle school and lower school, I know the kids go to them. In high school?
They do. There are students that do go. Again, it's one of those things like there are students who would never go to the guidance counselor. You'd like go to the, why would I ever do that? But one thing we've tried to do this year that didn't work well last year, but this year has been much more successful, is we're trying to set up the guidance department not as just the people you go to for an emotional issue, but that's the student support team for working on issues with teachers, for changing classes. I still get a lot of those emails from students, hey, can I have a meeting with you to talk about my class? And what I've been doing is I've kind of been prepping the guidance department and sending kids there. And as that happens and kids see, hey, I can talk to this student about switching class, I can talk with them about the issue that I'm having with my teacher, and they're not just going to say, let's talk about your feelings, but they're actually going to be able to come up with practical solutions, speak to the administration if there's an issue. So they're actually, I find that this year they are being utilized a little bit more and more effectively. Again, there are some students that will
Are they proactive, like for example, the skill building on the phones? I would assume they should be able to develop a curriculum, or e-cigarettes.
Yes.
They do often have nicotine, they do, they literally, I mean, this is, I do most of the work. The data's not in yet. I mean, they're really dangerous, and the data's not in, but the kids have no clue because it's a stupid little thing that they just suck on, or I don't know what to do with it. But the point is, like, someone has to educate them, and I think we have a lot of guidance counselors. One college and I think 3 other, like,
so
there's not a lot of educational programs coming out of that I see. Maybe I don't know about it.
I'll tell you what we're doing. So what we actually have is, I will call it 3, but it's actually 1.5. Mr. Hector is full-time as a guidance counselor, and Ms. Borkin, the former Mrs. Rios, is half-time. She also teaches a class, and she also supports educational support services. but she, and she's also the ninth grade advisor. But she does also have time for guidance, and then we also have a social work intern who is paid through 1 hour of my time per week as her supervisor. So we're really, I feel like, in terms of a budget perspective, really maximizing what we have in terms of guidance. And they are working on programs. They did a program last year about anxiety. What I'm working with them on right now, I've asked them to really spend more of their time, as you say, being proactive, but not necessarily with large programs, but with student issues. So when an issue comes up with a student who is, let's say, outside of educational support services, they become the case manager. So they're doing a lot of what I would call individual case management with students who are having academic issues, students who are having emotional issues. Even like, for example, like a student who breaks their arm. Like, where do you go to make sure that your child who can't write gets the right accommodations, gets a plan in place, if he has concussions? So they're doing a lot of that. As they get set with that, we're going to reintroduce their role in terms of bringing in the programmatic elements, because that is a role that they serve.
Along those lines, and also, I'm sorry, if, I don't know if they also proactively are just having a time to actually just touch base quickly with every student, for those, many of whom will never want to go to them, but that way, proactively, again, if they have an issue, they're not thinking, oh, why would I ever talk to them? Just as a quick check-in, I want to know your name. The school's not that big, that they should be able to at least.
So yeah, so Ms. Borkin has put that in place for the freshmen in terms of having a check-in with every single one of them to try to set them up. So again, they may not need it, but they should know that if something comes up, they know where to go. There's one last question.
Very short. So I'm also partnering with the guidance counselors, and they're going into classes, they're observing certain kids in classes, they're noticing certain things about teachers interacting with certain kids, and so it's been very valuable. And I just heard that people don't know them, the guidance counselors. So is there a forum where
we really should do that?
Is that for teacher conferences?
I
Or
mean,
is
at
that
the school night, there was like quick, but it was kind of ad hoc and it wasn't.
right for the ninth graders? Yeah. So we have to think of a way to introduce them. They really are wonderful, and it's the program we're building with them. It is very rich and exciting. So.
Yeah, they've taken on a lot of the dean of students role, which has been great.
This is again information that could be disseminated or on a website with who are these people and what are their roles and what do they do, so that parents know.
Getting to know you.
Right, yeah, like getting to know you is something we can add to like the pulse of newsletter.
And other than the ninth graders, are grades assigned to specific counselors, so you know if your kid is a 10th grader, and you have an issue, you need to talk to this person?
So last year you had Ms. Borkin work with the ninth graders, and Mr. Hector worked with 10th through 12th. What we decided this year is some students connect well with Mr. Hector, some with Ms. Borkin, so they can meet with either one. Typically, when an issue comes up in our classroom, we would sort of assign it to Mr. Hector, but we also try to sort of work out personality wise. And we also have Brandy Walker, who's the social work intern, she's here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
What does she do? What's her role?
She meets with students. She sits in classes to observe different various situations. She has a caseload of students that she meets with regularly, and also she's getting involved in some various projects. For example, we're about to start a homework study that we do on an occasional basis, where we collect data from students on how much time they're spending on homework and different subjects. So she's going to be doing that and putting that together for us. So again, individual guidance and guidance projects. The last question, which is going to take more than 30 seconds, but we'll bring it up now and then we'll find a way to continue the conversation. Culture of improving MIDO in the school, cliques, bullying, etc., especially in 10th grade. So I'm going to actually broaden it and say, I don't think it's an issue that's specific to a grade or to a school. I think that in high schools, look, they're young adults. At the same time, the place where I see that they need a lot of support and guidance is in terms of their understanding of relationships and how to have positive relationships and how to balance getting their needs met with the needs of others and what it means to be part of a group. And for different groups of students, it's interesting, different groups of students seem to hit snags at different points in high school. Some groups come into high school already like a complete mess. Like there were issues in 6th grade, in 7th grade, in 8th grade, and there's this group and that group. Other groups, the social dynamic starts to shift. People leave the grade, a student leaves the school, people come in, things shift. That, kids, they were with this friend group, and then all of a sudden they realize, you know what, I want to be with this group. And look, I think that, as an adult, we all care about our friends. We want to have relationships. Even working in school, I think I sometimes forget how much of our kids' lives, their social dynamic impacts. Like we're thinking, oh, the kids are in the class thinking about math, like they're in the hallway thinking about their math test. There's a large part of their brain that's thinking about so-and-so said this to me, and so-and-so is mean, and why isn't he doing this, and why isn't she sitting with me, and so that goes on now. Would it be nice if we could wave a magic wand over all the students and they would all be friendly? It would be nice, except one, it's not realistic, two, they would never learn how to navigate these situations. It's hard to watch kids navigate these situations, but it's what actually helps them to become adults. We need to help them with that, though. That's where the guidance team comes in. Things that you're hearing, make sure that you're in touch with the guidance counselors. We have heard from a lot of parents. We hear from a lot of the students. And then we're having those discussions on how can we kind of tweak the environment, speak with individual kids or groups of kids to kind of help them along. So that is going on right now. We have a couple places where, where we have concerns and we want to help the students to navigate. But again, it's something that is a little bit messy for students, but we are deeply concerned about that. As you hear things and as you have ideas, please share them with us, share them with the guidance counselors, because it does take a village. We are over time.
Can I just translate that quick question? What are you doing as far as the mission is concerned in order to try to create more unity among students?
So, let's go on for 2 more minutes and then let's adjourn, and then we can talk more. I want to stay and hear more about the mission. By the way, as you leave, I've got copies if anyone wants to take. I don't know if I have enough, but
was your question about
the mission?
What is happening about the mission relative to that topic, or just
Relative to that topic, not about the mission.
Okay. So what we did, the first thing is, I don't know if any of you if you heard from your students, your kids about the mission assembly that we had yesterday.
Yeah.
Mr. Berman really wanted to make sure that students were very thoughtful about their choices and weren't just being like, hey, what are you other 20, what do you got? One? Like they don't even know what it is, right. And we actually did see a little bit of that, which is so funny, like the kids are like.
Did they all listen and not bring their phones? Or did
They all listened and not with their phones.
So that's an idea.
You see, they didn't bring
Yeah.
their
So what we did is this.
But they didn't have their computers.
We told the students that you will be every day with people in your grade, most likely with a bunch of your friends, and you're going to get to meet other students as well on the buses. What we did at the assembly is we took like 2 or 3 freshmen that we knew were friends with each other. We put them together. We paired them with their senior big brother, big sisters at a table. We added 2, 3, or 4 10th and or 11th graders in groups of friends, like 2 or 3 friends, 2 or 3 friends. So everybody, they all had place cards. So the seating was very intentional. They all sat at a table with a friend or 2 and with students from other grades. And we set it up so at the table next to them were maybe a few more friends. So they couldn't decide all in a big group, but that way we knew that they had the security of knowing that if I picked bus 1, I have a friend there. So on one hand, they kind of had that security blanket of having their friends. On the other hand, we knew it would divide them up in such a way that they're also going to be able to meet other people, and that they were making choices not just based on their friends, but that was only one factor, but they were able to look at the other factors. And again, for the mission, again, it's such an incredible experience. I think the bonds are created over shared experiences. So I'm hoping that that will kind of develop organically as they're with students from other grades. And we'll also be encouraging that as well and talking with some of the older students. Like even in this case, we spoke to, the seniors knew they were coming to this assembly to choose what they were doing, but they were also there to help the freshmen choose. So as we can kind of create an environment that forges those bonds, I think it'll make it more successful.
So before people leave, can people volunteer or can we go around and just say why you came to this meeting here tonight and what you expect or what you were hoping it would provide or what you'd like it to provide going forward? Either, and if you don't want to talk now and you just want to send us an email about that, we'd really appreciate that to help guide the next time we meet so that we're really meeting people's needs. This is a really nice turnout and I appreciate that you're all here, but we want to make sure that you're getting what you came for. So would emailing be a better way to do this? Okay, let's do that. Please do email us. Both of us. And just do it. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And thank you to Elisa and Sarah for serving in the liaison. And again, please be in touch with them, and they will aggregate the information, and then we'll discuss how to make this even better. Thank you so much.
Neither have I. I've been there for like 3 nights in a row. And me too, right? Right? Alright.
You want to turn on the lights?
I
Good night, folks.